to say, there's nobody more surprised than me to find myself standing here tonight. Allow me to explain. When this presidential election was announced, I decided, for sensible personal reasons, not to get involved. To be honest, I have enough on my plate to be dealing with at the moment. But everything changed when I observed the hysterical response by many in media and political circles to the candidature of Martin McGuinness. I was profoundly depressed by the resurrection in certain quarters of fanatical atavistic hatreds that I had hoped would have remained buried as a result of a successful peace process. Sadly, it seems that there are still some influential people around who are so consumed with animosity that they are unwilling to move on and take advantage of the new dispensation for peace. Instead, they have chosen to remain locked in the past, still fighting old battles, rather than face the future with some positivity and optimism. In my opinion, such biased interventions go way beyond fair comment, and in fact do a disservice to democracy, in that they seek to influence the outcome of the election rather than provide the information necessary for people to make up their own minds. I realised that in all consciousness I could not stand idly by. I felt I had to do what I could to challenge such bias and negativity. So here I am.
At this time in the history of this country, north and south, east and west, every 32 counties of it, we need leadership that is about skill, about nerve, about stamina, and we need a leader who unashamedly, unapologetically advances the cause of Ireland. A leader who absolutely and explicitly stands shoulder to shoulder with what are sometimes termed the plain people of Ireland. That's you and me, the citizens. I know that Martin can do that. And I think as the campaign advances, it will become clear that that's the case. So on the 27th of October, I know my mind is made up. I'm voting for the candidate who is the most accomplished, the most dedicated, who has the most to offer. I'm voting for the best candidate, and his name is Martin McGuinness.
There's something that comes out of struggle that you can't buy, you know. When you've been at the cold face, when you've had to make the difficult decisions, when you've had to do the really difficult things, it makes you, you know, it really does. People, Irish people in our gut would think, if you were sending somebody in to negotiate the future of Ireland, you'd certainly be picking Martin McGuinness and Jerry Adams as the two guys you'd want in there for. extraordinary that we've got somebody in the field who's brought us on a completely new path, somebody whose name is international, somebody who's known across the world for the efforts that have been made in the peace process in Ireland. And I think we should grab it with both hands. He's an absolutely outstanding candidate. As Francis Black says, he's a gentle person. You know, I've only met him recently, and I just have been really impressed by him as a person. So it gives me absolute pleasure and great privilege to be standing here tonight to introduce to you clearly not only the best candidate in this election, but probably the best candidate we've ever had in a presidential election in Ireland. I give you Martin.
Thank each and every one of you for being here this evening, especially Bobby and Peter and Francis and Mary Lou and all of yourselves. And I mean, it's a bit hard to sit down there and listen to all these nice things that have been said about you, but it's heartwarming to see all of you here, and I want to thank everybody from the bottom of my heart for the support as we set out in what was going to be a very interesting adventure over the course of the next number of weeks. And has more room of and shall live and that. I've made it clear at the beginning of this campaign that I'm not in the business of attacking any of the other candidates, and I've resisted absolutely doing that, even though I have been invited almost by the media to do that, and indeed invited by at least one of the candidates who it appears to me wishes very badly to draw me into an unpresidential style confrontation. But I'm not going to do that. He has described me, he said, Martin, you're no Nelson Mandela. Well, I never claimed to be Nelson Mandela. I was going to say, but I resisted it. Well, you're no Michael Collins. Okay, if you and I were cast back to 1916, and Michael Collins had to choose between the two of us, who was going to the trenches with him? Who do you think he would choose? I was born in the Bogside, very proud to be born in the Bogside, at a time whenever the city was overwhelmingly Catholic, overwhelmingly nationalist, a hint of republicanism, but city council controlled by the unions. The Parliament that stormed, which up until recently I occupied the position of Deputy First Minister, a co-equal position alongside Peter Robinson. For 50 years, people like Eddie McAteer and others, the only piece of legislation they could pass, the only one single piece of legislation that they could pass in 50 years was the Wild Birds Act. So when those people talk about what's required for legitimate opposition to repression, discrimination, injustice and domination, they really should look at the conditions that the people of Derry lived in up until the civil rights protests in 1968. People were treated not just like second-class citizens, they were treated like dirt. No houses, no jobs, no social amenities. To say you were Irish was almost a crime. And of course, that could only go on for a certain length of time. My father was one of the most religious people I've ever met in my life, and I was shocked when he went on the 5th of October march. And of course, the marchers were beaten off the streets. And then, whenever people protested on the streets, Seamus Cusick was shot dead by the Royal Anglian Regiment. Desmond Beatty was shot dead by the Royal Ireland Regiment. Samuel DeBenny was beaten in his own house by the RUC and died several weeks later. And young people rose up and they fought the British Army on the streets. And of course the British Army continued to repress. On the 30th of January 1972, 27 people were shot in the space of half an hour in Derry's Bogside, and 14 of them died. And the people of Dublin burned down the British Embassy. And I've said a couple of times in the last few days, we didn't have any embassy to burn down. So we fought the British Army, and I'm not going to apologise to anybody. It really is a great honour for me to stand before the Irish people seeking their support in this great adventure really over the course of the next number of weeks to achieve the presidency of my country. Yes, it is my country. We in Derry are as Irish as people. In recent years, I have become more and more outraged at the utter greed and corruption which has given rise to the greatest economic crisis we have ever seen. I think it's a scandal that ordinary people up and down this island are paying for this every day, while at the same time trying to keep a roof over their heads and food on their tables. Who would have thought 150 years after the great land battles in Ireland, after David and the Land League, that the prospect of eviction is looming again for some Irish families? Who would have thought 100 years on, from the Dublin lockout when Connolly and Larkin stood with the people, that workers like those in Talk and Waterford are once again being thrown on the dole queue without so much as a thank you in the Ireland of 2011? I saw the interviews after the women were told that they'd lost their jobs, and I felt like crying when I saw how heartfelt their disgust and their absolute desolation appeared in terms of how they were going to feed their children or pay their mortgages. And it was one of the reasons, those interviews that I saw, that helped me make up my mind when I was asked would I go forward to be a candidate in the presidential election. So the greed and selfishness that dominated so much of political and business life in Ireland in the Celtic Tiger years is responsible for the financial mess we find ourselves in today. Those responsible for this state of affairs are not patriots. As President, I want to see every citizen regain a sense of pride in their Irish identity. I want to highlight the importance of community and inclusion, which are the cornerstones of Irish life. Ireland can and should be a place of positivity, where creativity and innovation are nurtured. I believe that far too many cynics stand in the way of our country reaching its true potential. I want to see Ireland reclaim the greatness of the tens of millions of Irish people across the world who are the leaders and innovators in the countries in which they now reside. So I will be a president for all the Irish people, including the diaspora. So if the Irish people vote for me as their president, they know exactly what they're going to get. Throughout 40 years and more of political activism, whether it be on the streets of Derry, in Downing Street, in the White House, in the Assembly, or on the Good Friday negotiations, I have sought to bring a set of basic principles to my work. And what are they? They are commitment, leadership, patriotism, endeavour, selflessness, and a deep, deep commitment to Ireland and her people. It would be my intention as President to use the next 10 years from 2012 and the centenary of the formation of the UVF, the Home Rule campaign, and the signing of the Ulster Covenant, and the anniversary of the 1916 Rising, to transform this decade of commemorations into a decade of reconciliation. The decade of reconciliation would celebrate the diverse nature of our society, celebrate the peace we now have, and commemorate the events of 100 years ago which defined the direction of Ireland up to the present generation. So we must continue to reunify the people of Ireland through reconciliation and respect. That is what will lead to an Ireland that is truly united. I am very confident in my Irishness. As President, I will attend any relevant event to celebrate the different cultural views and political identities that exist on this island, because there is a need for political maturity and tolerance of the different views on this island through what will be a sensitive period. Outreach is not something I think that's confined to the north. There are many sections of Irish society who have felt excluded over many years. As President, I want to reach out to them and make the office of President and the Irish institutions that they identify with and feel welcome in. So, what is this election about? I think this election is about leadership. I am willing to stand up with the ordinary people of Ireland. I am willing to stand up at this critical juncture of our nation's history. I will bring passion, patriotism and pride to the presidency of Ireland. And as I want to stand with the people of Ireland, I am asking the people of Ireland now, as we move forward over the next few weeks, to stand with me. Gorameen Amina.